Hi, this is Eddie Hearn, and you're watching Lights Out.
This is FAISAL Khan for Lights Out, and with me via Zoom, I'm delighted to be joined by legendary Stitchman, Jacob Stitch Duran. Jacob, 2 o'clock in the morning UK time. We're up late. We've got you on here. Delighted to have you join us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Yeah, 2 o'clock in the morning, but like we were talking earlier, Faisal, is that we work on 24-hour clock, so you know it's 2 o'clock in the morning somewhere. Luckily, it's not here in Las Vegas. So,
Las Vegas is a city that never sleeps, so I think I've come to the right person to get an interview, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning UK time. Let's just start off the interview.
Right up.
Sure, go for
Here
it.
we go. Turn that light off, get a little bit of the reflection.
Let's just start off the interview by talking about last week's action, UFC 257. Obviously, part of your career, you've worked closely in the UFC/MMA. I just want to start off the interview by asking you, what was your thoughts on Dustin Poirier's win over the notorious Conor McGregor?
Well, it wasn't a surprise by any means. You know, I've worked with them both. I know the capabilities of Dustin, and you know, it's funny because my son-in-law was going to watch the fights, and he asked me what I thought, and I said, you know, the thing about it, I've always liked Conor as a fighter, tough kid, to definitely, you know, back up what he could do, but you know, the only thing you can't beat is time. And the time that he's been away from what he does, his specialty, could be a detriment to him. Plus, not only that, but you know, he's done so much. He has a liquor brand. He's been spending a lot of money doing a lot of traveling and not really in the game where Dustin stayed focused. So, like I say, you know, and I wasn't surprised, but I'm never surprised because in this game, everybody is capable of doing some damage.
Going into the fight, of course, their first fight was all the way back in 2014, which Conor McGregor won very convincingly. Who did you have as the favorite going into this second fight?
I don't pick them, bro. You know, it's the thing about it. I've worked with so many of them. Like I say, it's like me picking you over Amir Khan. You know, I can't do that. You know, so I don't pick them. I just, you know, and people ask me all the time. I said, you know, the way I look at fights are what are the probability of a cut man being used for that type of fight, and that's the way I look at them. But yeah, it's too many guys that I work with one-on-one, but Dustin never surprised me. That's for sure.
With his win, it puts him in a really good place, especially in that exciting division right now. We also heard what Conor McGregor said, that he vows to continue fighting in the UFC. We also know that he's still interested in having another crack in the boxing world. You know, there's plenty of opportunities for them both out there. But let's start off with Dustin Poirier. What would you like to see him do next? Would you like to see a third fight between him and Conor McGregor? Or do you think he should be looking at the likes of perhaps Michael Chandler and Khabib as his next potential opponent?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, Khabib probably scratch him off the list, right? But Michael Chandler, I think, you know, they're both guys that are starting to make some kind of impression in the UFC. Michael Chandler just, you know, came in and had his first fight after leaving Bellator. But that's the match I almost guarantee you is going to happen.
As for Conor McGregor, you know, it's a defeat. We all know that he's really wanted to get that Khabib rematch. How much of a setback do you see this as trying to get that rematch with Khabib?
Well, I think it's big. You know, why? You know, the question would be why? You know, outside of just the economics, but, you know, when you go to matching guys one-on-one, you know, after a defeat, how do you go after a guy that is, for the most part, undefeated? You know, so I think that's going to be a hard match to follow up. And, you know, I don't know how big the pay-per-view numbers would be on that. But, you know, then, you know, same with Khabib. You know, he's in a position now where he could take it or leave it, you know. So we'll see. You know, we'll see what kind of marketing goes with that, how Dana goes and sells himself to these guys and try to make it a viable fight.
You mentioned that you worked with Conor McGregor in the past, so I take him you know him quite well personally. Looking back on the defeat, what do you think is the next best option for Conor McGregor in terms of the rest of his career?
Well, you definitely got to evaluate, what he wants to do and where's he at this time. And like I say, the number one factor in any athlete is time. You could beat anything, but you can't beat time. And, that's an old adage, but then the desire, that's the main thing, especially in the mixed martial arts. You have to have a desire to do what you do, to get in the gym and work hard, and it has to be a full-time job. And I don't know if he is going to want to do this on a full-time basis. He's already achieved everything, like Andre Ward, working with Andre Ward. Like I say, I've achieved everything that I needed to achieve. And the same thing with Conor McGregor. At what point does he go and say, you know what, I've done it. I'm gonna go out there and enjoy my life. And, my faculties are still good and my body's still okay. So that's something he has to weigh on himself and see if he wants to continue or just, enjoy the fruits of his labor.
If we rewind back to 2017, when well, it was shocking at the time, but he took on Floyd Mayweather. He gave boxing a crack. Some people would say he gave a good showing against Floyd Mayweather. Some people would say that boxing is quite a lot different to MMA, and boxing is not for Conor McGregor now. Over the last few weeks, there's been talks about Conor McGregor perhaps taking a fight with Manny Pacquiao. We've also heard Jake Paul interested in taking on Conor McGregor in the boxing world. Would you like to see Conor McGregor back in the boxing ring at some point in his career?
The thing with Floyd is it was a big mismatch. Floyd is such a great fighter, and I know Floyd. I'm in his gym all the time, and I've known him since, he came out of the Olympics and started living in Las Vegas and training. And I know the whole family, and I know his character. And when I saw him fighting Conor and he's down on the bottom, his head down below him, I'm thinking, what's he doing? But then you go to realize that he had so much confidence that he could do that because he's never done that in a fight before. On the marketing standpoint, that was a masterpiece, and but let me tell you what happened behind the scenes is New Year's Eve before the fights, I was up in Madison Square Garden doing a show. I think it was Bellator or PFL. And I walk into the dressing room and I see John Kavanaugh, and he comes up to me and gives me a hug and welcomes me and says, "Hey, look, I need to talk to you about working with Conor regarding this fight with Mayweather." And of course, it was the biggest fight out there throughout the world, and I was definitely interested. And we spoke, and he said he had just talked to Conor. I went back to ringside, and later on after fights, I went back to the dressing room, and he had just spoken to Conor, and Conor liked the idea, so his people got a hold of me, and we sent him a proposal, and with no counter offer, they just said I was too expensive. But it was more of the political thing of I don't think it would look too good if I was in the training center in Las Vegas every day in the UFC training center, working with Conor McGregor after the UFC let me go. But, I could have brought some value to him because I understand boxing. I know Floyd Mayweather. I know boxing, but they said I was too expensive and no counter. If they would have offered me $1, I probably would have took it just for the sponsorship opportunities that I would have had, but that didn't happen. But yeah, Manny Pacquiao, the same thing. Manny would be a very, very difficult guy for him to fight. If he would do something, I would book him with Jake Paul. I've worked with KSI when he fought Logan Paul, and worked with Anson Gibb when he fought Jake Paul, and and I know Jake Paul, and I know BJ Penn, his coach, and all that, and that would be more of a attraction than anything else. Even Floyd fighting Logan Paul to me is something that just it doesn't make sense. On the marketing side, not as much sense as if Conor McGregor is going to fight somebody like Jake Paul.
Would you want to see Conor McGregor back in the boxing ring, whether it's regarding fighting Manny Pacquiao or perhaps Jake Paul or anyone else?
Nah, I would say him if it was Jake Paul because it's a social media type of event. But, to go after a top-notch fighter like Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather, Terrence Crawford, any of these guys, that's two different levels, bro.
You obviously stated just a little while ago that Michael Chandler versus Dustin Poirier would be the fight to make next in that division. Chandler put on a stunning performance, a tremendous debut in the UFC with a first round knockout win over Dan Hooker. Were you surprised by Michael Chandler's performance and his win over Dan Hooker and in the manner that he did it?
Well, I didn't see the fights, but no, I'm not surprised that, Michael, I've worked with him, when I was with Bellator after the UFC let me go. I was the guy that worked with Michael Chandler all the time by his recommendations. And as a matter of fact, he had called me one time before he left his last fight with Bellator and asked if I would work his corner, but I already had another event already booked, so I couldn't do it. But yeah, he's a tough kid, man. I think that's the type of fight where you look at it as me as a cut man is I hope they each have a good cut man in their corner, because I could see blood on both of them.
After the fight, Michael Chandler called out, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, Khabib as well. How do you think he gets on against them three if those fights were to happen?
Oh, he's definitely at that level, no doubt about it. It's just a matter of because everything is sales and marketing. Michael Chandler definitely capability is one of those guys, but do the UFC fans know him as well as the Bellator fans knew him? And I think that's a key element. But he can fight, man. Big fan of his, big fan of Dustin Poirier, of course, Conor McGregor. How can you not be fans of him? Khabib, I remember working with Khabib early in his career, and first thing he did is he promised me one of those hats, So, and then I left, so I never got one. But he has enough respect for me where he would come and acknowledge me.
Let's bring you back into the boxing world now. We understand that talks are progressing very well for that potential undisputed heavyweight title clash between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. You was in Tyson Fury's corner for that tremendous performance that he put on against Deontay Wilder in the second fight. The fight we're hoping will be announced within the next couple of weeks, but what can you tell us from your side? Can we expect to see you in Tyson Fury's corner for that fight with Anthony Joshua, pending if it happens, of course?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I was honored to have gotten the call to work with him in that last fight with Deontay Wilder, but it made so much sense. On a business aspect, FAISAL, it made so much sense. This one, like I say, if they call me, of course, I'll be more than excited to work that. But I think that fight there is just as important as the Deontay Wilder fight. Yeah, let's hope they sign let's hope they sign the contracts, and let's hope they give me a call to work with them.
I've spoken to many people in boxing, outside of boxing, and they all relate back to that fight with Otto Walling. That cut Tyson Fury received, I believe it was to his right eye. That cut, 9 times out of 10, is more than enough to get the fight stopped. How lucky was Tyson Fury on that night that cut did not in the end get stopped? How lucky was he for the fight to continue? And would you say that cut is 100% healed going into the rest of his career?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and let me answer it this way: is Nevada, they're the best commission worldwide, and of course their number one thing is the safety of a fighter. But as you look at a cut like that, FAISAL, it's not. Whenever a referee or a doctor stops the fight, it's because a fighter is at a disadvantage, and you can't let blood freak you out. And a cut like that, it was a big cut, but it really wasn't affecting him performance-wise. And Jorge Capetillo, that's a good friend of mine. In fact, he's the one that recommended to Tyson Fury to bring me on against Deontay Wilder. But he did enough to keep him in the game and keep that blood away from him. Anywhere else, it could have been stopped. No doubt about it. So he dodged the bullet there. But when I did meet with him, we talked about the cut. First thing I did is I looked at it and I told him, whoever sewed you up did a great job, and it was just a real thin line, and we talked about what I was going to do on him, on his cuts, round by round. I wasn't going to wait till something happened. Every round I was going to keep ice on him and just do a lot of preventive maintenance on him. So we got that out of the way, but I don't think that will be a problem. But yeah, I'd look forward to it. Both both Joshua and Fury beat Vladimir Klitschko. And I worked with Vladimir Klitschko for 10, 12 years. So just to come back and work with one of the guys that beat Vladimir Klitschko was a little bit of a different experience. But such a good guy, such a good guy, man. The whole team, we're just the kind of people. And, I always say I've done so many world title fights that to me, it's not about the title fight anymore. It's about the character of the person that I work with and the team. And I've been blessed enough to say all the guys I work with have been good people.
The fight with Anthony Joshua is huge, but, because of so many aspects. You look at it's the fact that we're going to get an undisputed heavyweight championship since the first time since Lennox Lewis. We finally do get to say who the number one heavyweight of the division is. People obviously have their opinions. Some people would say it's Tyson Fury. Some people would say it's Anthony Joshua. The only way to decide that is, of course, is to get them both in the ring. Now, I know you've worked closely with Tyson, and I know you admire Anthony Joshua just like the majority of the boxing world does.
Sure.
As a neutral, who do you have as the favorite going into that fight?
I would, as I look at skill level, I would go with Tyson Fury, only because his skill level is not skillful, and that's what makes him extremely dangerous. And when he fought Vladimir, I'm looking at him and I think, oh yeah, this is gonna be an easy fight for Vladimir Klitschko. But as I saw him fight Vladimir, his style of fighting is one that can't be taught and one that you can't learn. Tyson Fury's style is Tyson Fury's style. It's just like Floyd Mayweather has his own style. Same thing with him. And the hardest thing for people to do, for an opponent to do with another opponent, is try to read him and figure him out. And you can't figure out Tyson Fury. So I say I don't bet on guys. I don't give it. But you asked me that question on a skill level wise. I think Anthony Joshua, skill level wise, is better skills. But when it comes to being unorthodox and you can't read, I got to give the edge to Tyson Fury.
Many people regard the victory over Deontay Wilder in the second fight as one of the best British overseas performance in a very, very long time, especially in the heavyweight division. But whilst a lot of people are giving credit to Tyson Fury for the performance, the former champion Deontay Wilder has hit back at Tyson Fury and has come up with claims such as Tyson Fury put something in his glove, Tyson Fury, there's a lot of foul play involved, and of course he accused his trainer/coach Mark Breeden of spiking his water. What do you make of the accusations made by the former world champion in Deontay Wilder?
Can I say the word bullshit?
You can say whatever you'd like.
Yeah. Now, you know what? It's one thing that really irks me is these guys are modern day gladiators. They understand that it's a hurt business, and you got a 50% chance of losing. That's by the numbers. But what Deontay Wilder did about the fans, about the gloves and about all this was just, it was bull. And I've done interviews because I know there was a group of guys that were saying that Tyson Fury did this to the gloves and did that to the gloves. And these guys are non-boxing people that were creating that kind of drama. So the interviews that they asked is, what do you think? Well, it doesn't happen. And it was stupid because, they got a picture of, it looks like the glove is very loose, but when Tyson throws punches, he flings his hand. So that picture, it caught that moment when his hand is flinging. But why would you want to pull your hand out of your glove to hit him with a loose glove? It just doesn't make sense. Deontay Wilder's talking about, the weight was a big difference than, that he wore this thing and tired him out, but he was practicing with vests that weighed 40 pounds anyway. So all that was a bunch of bull, and to try to discredit somebody for something you didn't do, to me was a bad judgment on his part and his fans. And they still complain about it. But it was a bunch of bull.
For many years, especially in the heavyweight division, the heavyweight division sort of went on a bit of a decline. I personally believe. And, for many years, we were crying out for another era like Lewis, Holyfield, Tyson, Ali, Frazier, Liston. We was calling out for three big names to come along and really, bring the light back to the division, bring the excitement back to the division. And now when we look at it, we're not far off an undisputed clash between Fury and Joshua. Do you believe, regardless of what Deontay Wilder said, do you still think he has a place in this heavyweight division? And do you think Deontay Wilder can come good again?
Well, it depends on who he fights. You know, it's the second fight I've had against Deontay Wilder. I worked with Sergey Liakhovich from, I think, Belarus, that got knocked out and sent him to the hospital. So Deontay Wilder, the last thing to ever go for a fighter is that power, and he has that power. But, you know, the thing about it, you talk about Mark Breland. Mark Breland did the best thing that he could have done for Deontay Wilder. And I had done some interviews with Sky Sports and all that. And I said, you know, you have to look at, and I know that he was looking at the kind of injury that Deontay Wilder is receiving, because you have what you call short-term injuries, which are the cuts, the swelling, the knockout. But then you have the long-term injuries, which will affect you, you know, 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And, you know, like in the 5th round, I looked at the other corner and I told Tyson and I told Sugar Hill, I said, look, man, they're going to stop the fight. I could just see it, because the type of shots that Deontay Wilder was taking were these long-term damage shots that that Mark Breland knows about. So what he did, he literally just, you know, might have saved him some concussions and might have saved him some of that dementia pugilistica that happens down the road. And for them to have gotten rid of him, I think what would have been nice is if Tyson Fury would have brought him as part of his team. So that didn't happen, but, you know, nonetheless, Mark Breland did the right thing.
You was very fortunate to have grown up at a time where we had the era of the Fab Four: Leonard, Hearns, Duran, and Hagler. A lot of people are comparing the 135 division sort of similar to that Fab Four era, because when we look at the 135 division, we've got Teofimo Lopez, you know, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, and Gervonta Tank Davis, and of course, we've even still got Vasily Lomachenko. What's your thoughts on this 135 division, and do you think we get to see the best and the biggest fights in that division within the next 18 months, 2 years?
I like it. You know, I was doing the fights for Top Rank ESPN in the bubble here at the MGM, and of course, you know, Teofimo Lopez fighting against Lomachenko. I saw that fight, but I've always been a fan of Lopez anyway. I think Lomachenko probably fought his worst fight ever in preparation. Well, I don't know, in not preparation, but what you're doing in the ring at that time, because he waited too long. But Devin Haney, Tank, you know, Ryan Garcia, yeah, these are guys that I think, and they're the young generation where social media is getting involved and backing these guys up. I mean, Ryan Garcia, he has, you know, how many millions of people that are already following him, but that's the new generation of these boxers. And I think it's nice to see young blood coming on up.
Ryan Garcia put a post on his Instagram during the week, sort of confirmed that his next opponent will be the legendary Manny Pacquiao. Now, to some people, they're getting excited to see the fight, but to others, they don't want to see Ryan Garcia jump in with Manny Pacquiao yet. They want to see him fight the likes of Haney, Lopez, Tank, Lomachenko. I mean, as a fan, what do you want to see Ryan Garcia do next? Because you just mentioned 8 million followers on Instagram, you know, probably the biggest face of that division in terms of the following. You know, a lot of people are comparing him to be the next Oscar De La Hoya. You know, they're calling him the face of Golden Boy Promotions. Does a fight with Manny Pacquiao make sense, or would you rather see him fight, as I mentioned, the Haneys, the Lopez, the Tanks, and the Lomachenkos?
Yeah, he's not. No, it's too early for him to fight a Manny Pacquiao type of guy with that much experience, and you see he got dropped, right? So he's still in the learning process of getting and climbing up the ladder. And you know, one thing he has on his side is height. You know, so you got the young lion going against the old lion in Manny Pacquiao. So why would you, you know, if he won that one, then it's that same scenario. Wow, Manny Pacquiao over the hill. But I don't know if Manny Pacquiao needs that. Manny Pacquiao don't need that fight as much as Ryan Garcia needs it. So I don't think you'll see that fight.
You've also had a small stint in Hollywood as well. I mean, Rocky Balboa, Creed 1 and 2. You know, just talk to me, what was that experience like? You know, I mean, the great Rocky movies, and then of course, Sylvester Stallone passing down the baton to Michael B. Jordan. What was that experience like for you? And what was your take looking back on the Creed movies? Do you reckon we'll see a third Creed movie?
Yeah, you will. I'll get back to. Let me star, but actually I've done 6 movies. So
Six
the
movies,
first
yeah.
one I did with Woody Harrelson and Antonio Banderas, Play It to the Bone. And then I did Ocean's 11 when Vladimir Klitschko fought Lennox Lewis during the time that they're robbing the casino. And shortly after that, I started working with Vladimir Klitschko. I did Here Comes the Boom with Kevin James, an MMA movie, but then they called me to do Balboa. And here's what was happening at that time. Joe Cortez, the referee, called and said, man, they're doing a movie, and would you be interested in being a cut man and all that? And he gave me the details, and I said, well, you know, I have a world championship fight in Paris, France with Fabrice Giozo, the cruiserweight champ of the world. Then the next week, I have a fight in London with Audley Harrison. He was the heavyweight that won the gold medal. So I told him I couldn't do it. All right. And I got off the phone and I called my wife and I said, hey, look, I got a call to be in the Rocky movie. Oh, great. I said, well, I can't do it because I got to go to France with Giozo. I got to work with Audley Harrison. My wife says, are you crazy? She says, Rocky's an American icon. You have to do it. So, man, I'm telling you, I'm sitting in my computer right here where I'm at right here for about 15 minutes. And I was already sending Audley Harrison's people the information, the flight, you know, the amount, when I get all the particulars. And I looked at it and I pressed delete and I sent him a message. I said, I hope you guys understand from our last conversation to now, I got offered an opportunity to be in a Rocky Balboa movie. And they understood. And it turns out that that fight got canceled anyway. Well, I take that back. Turns out that the fight in France got canceled and Audley understood. So I ended up being in a Balboa movie, but then I get a call to be in Creed. And Ryan Coogler was a young 28-year-old director that wrote and directed Creed. And he was working in Oakland because I used to live in Oakland. And with Andre Ward, I knew him since he was a kid. But Andre was working on before the filming. And Andre Ward's the one that recommended me. He said, you ought to get Stitch to be the cut man. So they called me and I came on board and I spent 6 weeks in Philadelphia one-on-one with Michael B. Jordan. I wrapped his hands every day. You know, every day I worked the corner with Sylvester Stallone. And I'll give you a little behind the scene is when I got the script, my name was Marcel the cut man. And I said, well, gee, I got to change that because I don't know anybody named Marcel. But when it was time for Rocky to introduce the team to Adonis, Sylvester Stallone, his introduction was, oh, this is Stitch, the best cut man.
Cut man, yes.
Man, brother, I was so excited that he said that deep. My heart is just kind of pounding like, yes, you know. And so we did a second take, and the second take I liked, but they used the original one. But the second take, he says, oh, this is Stitch. He's so good as a cut man, he should have been a surgeon. And I thought that was like, so anyway, fast forward the next day when we're filming, I go and I tell Stallone, I said, look, man, I want to thank you for using my name. And he says, no, it has to be authentic, you know. And so that's what happened there. And, you know, up around the 5th week, I finished wrapping Michael B. Jordan's hands. And I told him, I said, look, man, just like the Brits, I'm going to knight you as a fighter because everything you've done to this point, you've represented our sport at the highest level. So I knighted him, you know, just kind of like what you guys do, right? And then I get called for the second one, you know. And so let me tell you, in the movie, you remember in the first one when Rocky got sick and he threw up?
Yeah, in the gym.
Right. Yes, in the gym. So in that series, they we were part of it, but it was the gym where we filmed that in Philadelphia is in the second floor. And it's snowing outside and it's freezing in Philadelphia. So we stayed on the steps going down. So we didn't see what was going on. I didn't even know what scene they were filming, but we're down covering right here, waiting for that to finish. And all of a sudden I hear Stitch. And first thing I do is I go up and I said, maybe that's part of the movie. Well, it was, but it wasn't in the script. That was something that Michael B. Jordan just kind of threw out. And the next morning I'm wrapping his hands and I said, look, Michael, I want to let you know, you know, I don't kiss ass. But let me tell you, that moment right there was very, very important because my job as a cut man is to take care of you. And during the scene, we had just left and you knew that we had left. And then this happens to Rocky. And the first thing that pops into your head is, let me see if Stitch is there. Stitch! So that became part of the movie, you know. And so, but going into Creed 2 now is, I'm telling Michael how proud I am of the young generation. You know, him, Brian Coogler wrote and directed it, Tessa Thompson, Steve Cappell that directed the second one, the young generation of actors. And Michael looks at me and we're in this trailer and he says, you know, Stitch, we went from being actors to writers, producers, and directors. And he says, I'm directing Creed 3 and you're with me as long as you want. So that's a little story that you can tell the Brits because it hasn't been mentioned over there. And just the other day on Entertainment Tonight, they were interviewing him whether Creed 3 was going to happen. He goes, yeah, it's going to happen, but down the road. So this pandemic hit and kind of changed everything. But yeah, I hope I get the call to, you know, be part of that legacy. And like I tell people, how many guys do you know that have been in 3 movies with Sylvester Stallone? What an honor. So I've been blessed.
There was obviously always questions going to be asked after the Rocky movies. What happens next? Does the sort of Rocky movie continue? And, you know, you look at it, those 2 Creed movies, you know, you had the likes of Tony Bellew, Andre Ward, Dolph Lundgren, yourself, Sylvester Stallone, Michael B. Jordan, Gabe Rosado as well. I think, you know, both movies were brilliant. I think the second one was very good as well. The first one, I think the storyline went really, really well, you know, him not knowing that he was Apollo Creed's son. And then obviously people would think that it was a mistake or a phony. And then he goes all the way to Liverpool to fight Ricky Conlon, who was obviously Tony Bellew at the time. I think, you know, a lot of credit you guys should take because they were both brilliant boxing movies, and we hope to get a third movie because, listen, it's not every day we get to see a good boxing movie. You know, we had Rocky, we've had Southpaw, you know, Raging Bull, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we do get to see that third movie. Just want to get your final thoughts on who is the breakout star of the year for you in boxing. Which star should we look at for the most this year?
Well, I think Ryan Garcia, you know, personality-wise, skill level-wise, you know, whenever you knock people out, you're doing pretty good. But I think Ryan Garcia is the one that name just kind of floated up to the top. Yeah. Personality-wise.
Definitely. 8 million followers, you know, considered to be the next Oscar De La Hoya, the face of Golden Boy Promotions. It really is exciting times. Stitch, I just want to say it's been an absolute honor speaking to you. It's a privilege getting you on our channel. Thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate you coming on here, and I hope you and the family are staying safe throughout these unprecedented times. Fingers crossed we can all get back to some normality soon. Please stay in touch, and hopefully it's the first of many interviews, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.
No, I appreciate it, man. And, you know, you're talking about the Deontay Wilder-Anthony Joshua fight. You know, when Klitschko fought Anthony Joshua was in Wembley Stadium and 90,000 people. But, you know, I always say 90,000 Brits is like 150 of somebody else from other countries because they were so loud and so respectful. And like Vladimir Klitschko said, I don't know if you were there or you saw it on TV, but at the end, just like the Rocky Balboa movie, when Rocky fought his last fight, the people were yelling, Rocky, Rocky. Brother, they were doing that in Wembley Stadium. Klitschko, Klitschko, Klitschko. And of course, Anthony Joshua, you know, so yeah, but it gotta be nice if that fight with Joshua and Tyson Fury happens in the UK. If so, let's talk again, brother.
Our fingers are crossed, but it's very, very unlikely that that fight does happen due to the pandemic. But as long as it happens, that's all we can hope for. But yeah, once again, Jacob Stitch Duran, and a massive honor and a privilege to finally speak to you. Please stay in contact. Once again, keep yourself safe, keep the family safe. Fingers crossed we come through these real tough times, and we look forward to speaking to you in the future.
Anytime, man. Got a lot of stories.
Well, we look forward to hearing them.
And now I'm doing the bare knuckle fights, you know. So yeah, when it comes to combat, I did an interview yesterday. It's supposed to have been like this one. It ended up being like an hour and a half because the guys kept asking questions and questions and questions. And I said, I have more stories than anybody. I've been blessed to work with the best and honored. So let's do it again anytime, brother. No problem. Well, Jacob Stitch Duran, thank you very much for talking to Lights Out. All right. Thanks. Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.